video game movies. You can find them filed under the Netflix category Disappointment. With scores as high as 8%, it makes you wonder why the movie industry is having such a difficult time translating stories from the video game medium. The easiest reason to cite is player agency. Video games are interactive while movies are not. The player is the one that decides the who, what, and when of the story. The experiences of the player in a game setting is difficult to replicate for hundreds of people sitting in a movie theater. Wheeler Winston Dixon, a professor of film studies at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, says, "Films offer a single linear tale that's open to individual interpretation, whereas games are meant to be experienced differently and in a multitude of ways by every player. Changing the format of a free-flowing narrative into a linear narrative restricts the audience's view of the world the video game has created. In Hitman, the player controls Agent 47 and has to rely on his skills of disguise and stealth to pull off a mission to kill a target. It's a puzzle game that involves the player's wits and creativity to get through each mission. Guns and gratuitous violence are secondary or not even involved. However, when the controls are taken from the players and placed into the screenwriter's hands, Agent 47 is suddenly unrelatable. Connecting to a bald, genetically engineered assassin that never speaks is easy when it's you. But the movie studios failed to make a compelling action movie and character that emulated the player's experiences in the games."
But interactivity isn't the only difference between video games and movies. The way story plays a role in each medium is different as well. Graphics and game engines take precedence over story during most video game development. In fact, most developers don't even have writers as permanent members of the staff. Video games aren't usually known for their lengthy backstories. You could play hours of Overwatch without even knowing what race your character is, and you would still enjoy it. When turning a video game into a movie, the movie studios tend to focus on what made the gameplay compelling, which might make sense on paper, but while it might be okay for the story to be secondary in a video game, it doesn't make sense for it to be secondary in a movie. Then you can have the opposite problem with narratives as well. Some video games are story-heavy, but they take hours and hours to play. Even short video games can last at least 3 hours, not including the time spent going back to get collectibles and achievements. A movie is usually only 1.5 hours to 2 hours long, and to adapt a video game that could take hours on end to play and condense it into a film, you lose the lore and storytelling that the video game medium provided. Let's look at Assassin's Creed. Ubisoft has created a game series that spans 9 main title games, 10 other console and handheld games that aren't part of the main series, 3 short films, 12 graphic novels, a book series, and an encyclopedia. Making a movie from all of this source material was a daunting task. A balance needed to be struck between satisfying original video game fans and moviegoers who are new to the series. Cameron Kunzelman says it's difficult to know exactly how invested in the grand narratives of Ubisoft's magnum opus a viewer needs to be to understand the film. The screenwriters dedicated too much time to exposition to accommodate those that were unfamiliar with the story. But that exposition merely bored those that already knew the story and confused those that didn't. Tackling that amount of story and expecting to fit everything into one film was the mistake that the movie studios made. Translating from an interactive medium and dealing with limited narratives do make it difficult to make good video game movies. But it's not impossible. Ultimately, it comes down to the people that are in charge of making the movies. Directors and screenwriters aren't writing for a video game audience. Even though video games have risen in popularity, it's still relatively new, and making a movie targeting just those hardcore players isn't the best strategy when making a wide-release film. Plus, there aren't many established movie makers in the industry who care enough about the material. Higher-ups in the industry just look at the numbers and decide based on that whether a movie will be made, regardless of the content. Lead writer for the Assassin's Creed game series, Corey May, said it often comes down to money, as movie studios frequently choose to make films based on the franchises that sell the best, not those with the most cinematic potential. It is very likely that we won't see a good video game movie in a while. Just like how it took comic books almost half a century of movie making to finally make a good film, and then another 2 decades of flops to get to the comic book superhero craze we have now. It's going to take time to get those who care about the material in the seats that matter. The best adaptations, remakes, and sequels are always the ones that are by the fans and for the fans. So until the video game movie genre finds a J.J. Abrams of its own, fans may just have to endure a couple more bad movies in the meantime.